coming. Today we have the Houston Museum of Decorative and Fine Arts. Did I say that right, Tim?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. From down in Chattanooga, and they're under renovation, so they're doing a little traveling road show for us. And so I'm not going to steal all your thunder, but I'll turn it over to you, Tim and Beth. And welcome and thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you all for hosting us here in MCMINN County. We appreciate, we're in Hamilton County, but we so appreciate being able to come out into the area, and we certainly want people to know about our wonderful museum in Chattanooga. My name is Tim Barnett. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the museum. I started in 2020 as a volunteer, actually during COVID times, and we had a transition where the education director left, and we also got a new director, and so then I took the position in 2022. So I'm just really glad to be here. Today I have with me Beth Council, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her position.
Hi, my name is Beth Council. I've been with the Houston since 2019. My position is I am the inventory specialist, and when I started, the main thing I did was pack boxes all day long, because we are undergoing this renovation. Everything that was in storage and later everything that was up in the museum had to be carefully packed in over 900 boxes, of which at least 875 maybe I had my hands on personally. So my job is making sure that the collection is healthy, we have it in the right storage conditions. So mine is basically a hands-on. Most of the time, if you came to the museum, you would not have seen me because I was in the basement, and that's where most of my work occurs, behind the scenes. But while we are closed down from our main museum because it is being renovated and are in a much smaller space, I'm able to help Tim when we get to go out and talk to area people in the community.
And when we think about museums, that's what it's all about. It's bringing, you want the community or in the area to really have that kind of experience of what we're all about. So today, when we came here, we thought about, we have options of slideshows and things like that, but we wanted to make it a very personal and an intimate setting so that you can take a look at such a variety of our collection of glass. And when we think about Anna and what all she collected, her glass collection, that particular category is probably the largest. Although she collected so many other things, we get a lot more questions about glass. And so today, that's what we want to just kind of take a little bit of time and look at these pieces, talk about maybe their function, talk about their artistic value when we think of it like that, how they were made, and maybe what would be more practical to use. We were talking about usefulness, because this is a decorative arts museum. So when you think about the decorative arts, these are things that were used by people. So did we want to talk about Miss Anna first?
Yeah, let's give them, if you haven't been to the museum before, you may not know exactly who we are or why we are. Our collection is the collection of one woman, and it's this woman that we have in the poster, Anna Safley Houston. Anna was born in 1876 in Evening Shade, Arkansas. To put that into a little bit of context, the Civil War had only been over for 11 years. Arkansas had been a state for about 22 years. The president was Rutherford B. Hayes, the very famous Rutherford B. Hayes. So that puts you where they are. Anna was the oldest daughter out of 11 children. Her father was a blacksmith. Blacksmith was a very important job at that time because everything was horse and buggy back in those days. And he was a blacksmith and wagon maker. Unfortunately, her mother died with her last pregnancy, the 11th child, who also died shortly after that. Her dad remarried when Anna was about 13, and Anna stayed in the house for about 2 more years, and then for whatever reason we can imagine, she was ready to go out on her own, and she did at the age of 15. The first job she had, she hooked up with a group of other young women that traveled around selling hair care products. All of these women, it's kind of hard to tell in some of these pictures because her hair looks sort of like a bubble. She had very long red hair. And in a letter that we have where she has, it's actually on the back of this picture of her as a young girl, she describes what she's wearing. She's wearing a blue shirtwaist dress and a black velvet ribbon, and she describes her hair as auburn and wavy, and that she never wore bangs. So in a little snapshot of our collection, we get an image of Anna that we would have never known because these are black and white pictures. So we have her handwriting, and we have her description of herself. After she finished working with the traveling hair care products, she continued to travel the United States. She worked with Macy's in New York City, and she worked at Marshall Field's in Chicago. We know that she worked in one of those as a buyer, and we also know she was involved in the millinery department. If you're not sure what millinery is, it's hats. When she finally came to Chattanooga at the turn of the last century, we think it was about 1902, one of the things she did in Chattanooga was open a millinery shop, millinery and dry goods. But she had always loved decorative things. When she was a young girl, she describes collecting pieces of broken glass that she would find, and she would attach it to other things, making her own beautiful glass things that at the time she was a young girl, she certainly didn't have the ability to afford. In Chattanooga, she also opened a small antique store, and that's where she really focused in on her love of antiques. How she in that day and age as a woman got the wherewithal to travel the country, I'm impressed, because she was in New York City, she was in California, she was in Mexico, she was in Canada, and all along the way she was collecting a lot of the things that you see here. Some of these things she would have collected because she loved them and had a passion for. At one time she had 15,000 pictures, not all the other stuff, just pictures.
Wow.
And a big share of those were pink. She loved pink. So she went out, she collected. Some of this stuff undoubtedly she collected as the stock for her store, and she intended to sell. Along came the Depression, and she lost her store. She had rental houses, she lost those, but she did not want to get rid of anything. So what she did is she got some land in a suburban area outside the city, and proceeded to build a barn with her own hand and the help of some high school and college students. She built a barn, no electricity, no running water, just lots of space for her pretties. And as she got older, she had a desire, and it was her stated desire, that she have a museum. So Tim, if you'd like to tell them a little bit about her building a museum.
Right. She, as Beth was explaining, she had been in Chattanooga a while, and so, she had built a client base, and this client base, I think she was very close to. She had 100 people on her charter that she wanted these 100 people to be on the charter for the museum. So as she got older, the clients were in some ways were like her family, because she really had that connection, and they were concerned about her getting older. She was living the way she was living, And what was she going to do with all these beautiful things? So an attorney met with her in 1949. And at that time, they got started with the idea of setting it up as a nonprofit. And so that's what they did. She had those 100 people, clients, and they set it up. And really, in her mind, she envisioned the museum to be something left to the people of Chattanooga so that they could learn and appreciate the history of that time period and how things were made. So that happened in 1949, and then in 1951 she died. So it was really good timing for that to be able to be set up. At the time, there was so much to do at her place. It took a long time and a lot of volunteers, and our museum is really has a history base on volunteers, so many volunteers over the years. And they cleaned everything, got everything out of this barn and off of the property, and they had the opportunity to get a house which is near the Hunter Art Museum. So they moved into this house in 1961. They got everything in that house, and then all of a sudden that house needed to be torn down to build a parking lot. So that's when they got the house across the street in 1968, which is where we are now at 201 High Street. And that particular house is a perfect setting for us of the types of things that she collected. Now, we never really had enough room to display everything, and as Beth was talking about, our basement was just a true museum separate to itself because we've had so many small objects there. But that's kind of where we are as far as the history of the museum. And I guess I could just go ahead and talk a little bit too about our future plans.
Yes.
Our future plans and what we're thinking about and working on now is we have moved into a pop-up museum, which is just across the street. We're actually in an old restaurant, and we have 3 curated rooms and 1 gift shop. So we have a nice sampling of the collection. While our Victorian house is being renovated, we are in phase 2, and we are doing a complete renovation from the basement up, and we're doing an addition onto the back, which is about 1,800 square feet. So it'll be 3 new levels. We'll also have a special exhibit place there, and so we're really excited about that, and we hope it to be back into the house by the end of next year. So really that's kind of where we are looking at. From 1961, we had a little bit of renovation in this house in the 90s, but really this is the first major project since we officially became a museum and that we have undertaken, and we're so excited about it because we love our location, we have such a great collection, and now we can share more of it at the same time. So I think I want to go into talking about our glass and what we're looking at first. And I wanted to bring special attention to the blown glass. So when we think about blown glass, there's 2 kinds of categories we look at for our collection. The blown glass are going to be actual glass that's blown. They will take a blob of glass, the glass blower will blow that, and all of these pieces are going to have a pontil on the bottom where they're actually broken off and being able to decorate or either reheat. Some of these are reheated to make sure the process of shading. So when we think about blown glass, we have 3 that are here that are in particular. This one, I'm going to start off with, this is what we call cranberry overshot. This cranberry overshot is a piece of blown glass, but it's also has a crackle design with a special blown icicle decoration, and the feet are the same as the icicle. When we're looking at this as a decorative object, we are about the objects that are used, but this piece right here would be so highly decorated, it's really not functional to use for every day. Just to lift it, and then these pieces get broken off. So this would be a work of art, and when we're looking at blown glass, one of the higher end works of art for blown glass. And then the other piece that we brought in would be this satin glass. And satin glass would become in 2 layers, and she loved satin glass, as he said. As Beth was saying, pink was cranberry was really her favorite color, but it would be 2 layers, and there's air traps in this, and the hydrofluoric acid, and then the special attached handle would give it that satin look, especially the acid. And this is kind of a honey color, but it comes in blue and yellow and green, and especially pink. That would be our other piece of blown. And then of course the amberina. This amberina piece here has the pontil on the bottom as well. And amberina was the first patent shaded glass in the United States in 1882. So that would have been, amberina would have really shown from amber glass as it's reheated. And that heating process would show it either at the top or the bottom. And it can be pressed as well. So it could be pressed or blown. So our first category when we're thinking about is of course the blown, and then we get into the pressed. And I always like to tell people that pressed glass or patterned glass, and today we might think of like depression glass. All of those were possible because of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution made it very practical for people to have glassware on their tables. And so it was, because it was mold produced, they were able to really mass produce it. And of course companies love to compete for the best quality or the best color, and so they would want people to have this pressed glass or pattern glass on their table. And we've got 3 examples here that we brought with us that are all different. Now of course it came in clear, but pressed glass, like this particular piece, this is custard pressed glass, and this custard glass, they would add bits of uranium salt, and we think of this as like a cream or the color of custard pie. So it's like a milk glass, so it's very opaque. And then they would take a little bit of the pattern, a lot of times, not always, and this is like a gold wash that they would put on here, and it's gotten dull over time. You certainly never put any of this in the dishwasher, and then even hand washing it would be a challenge. So although this is practical, you could use it, but you would have to be very careful with it. And most all of these, not all of them, but most all of these would come with a set of tumblers. You would get a set of glasses that would go with these. So this is the first one that we brought as an example. This beautiful emerald piece is called Memphis. That's the name of the pattern. Because back then, the companies would have like the cities, different cities or different state patterns, and they would come up with these names, and that's a good way they could market them. And once again, you've got this beautiful emerald color, and then you've also got the gold paint, but you'd have to be very careful washing that as well, and that would have come with probably a beautiful table set of a butter dish and a creamer and sugar, and then some more tumblers, and so it's a beautiful pattern for color for that, this emerald. And then our last piece over there that's pressed would be what we call ruby stain. And the idea behind that was, okay, the pressed glass is clear, but if we add a little bit of this ruby stain to it, it's just a thin film of ruby on the top of it. And once again, you want to be careful washing that. And a lot of the souvenir glass was made of ruby stain. So these companies would have these ruby stain pieces of glass, and you're at the World's Fair in 1904. And my name is Tim, and I went up to the booth, and I would want my name as a souvenir. So Tim, World's Fair, 1904. And that was perfect to do and engrave on ruby stained glass. And you see so much of it now. People's names, people's dates on it. And it was mass produced, but then it was personalized when you got to those public events. So these three items that we brought are the pressed, and then like I said, we've got blown glass. So those were the two main categories when we think about glass in our collection.
I want to speak to you a little bit about some of the other pieces that Tim hasn't highlighted. He's mentioned several names: the emerald glass, the amberina, the cranberry, and those are just all terms that he's thrown out. I think everyone here probably knows that all glass is made basically of one thing. It's made of the earth. It's made of sand. And the way that these glasses, these different pitchers will differ is based on mostly two different things. The type of minerals that are added to the glass as it is being made, and then the heating or firing technique that is used in the manufacturing process. Now we have a little handout that we like to give out that I encourage everybody to grab one when you leave. It is basically the recipe for making if you've got a bunch of sand at home, I've got a recipe for you. So you'll see the red glass, and the red is also pink. It's going to be your sand, but you're going to add some gold, copper oxide, and cadmium. The amber, and I'll describe the heating technique in a minute on this. This is basically an amber pitcher. It was made with iron, carbon, and sulfur to make that pitcher amber. And the changes are done with the heating technique. And I'll get into that in a second. But I encourage you to grab one of these to take with you. If you have some grandkids or younger people that would like to color it, please take multiples. I said that Anna's favorite was pink, and if you ever visit our museum, and you should, you'll see lots and lots of pink. This is a cranberry glass pitcher. All kinds of techniques, and they'll range in color from almost red to, we have a lot of it in a satin finish, so it's a very light pink color. The Burmese glass, this is one of our finer glasses, isn't it, Tim?
It is.
The Burmese.
When we think about the blown.
Mm-hmm. So the Burmese, the yellowy lime color is created by the use of uranium, which of course will cause you to glow. So that's the nice thing about these pieces. There's a very popular, and it was a mass-produced type of glass that's more of a clear glass, called Vaseline glass, or some people call it uranium glass. It was very popular. And this crackle glass is a type of Vaseline. And see how, I'll step back so you can see how it glows, especially there on the handle. So the colors are mostly achieved by the type of minerals that are added to the slurry of sand as it's made. This one, as Tim mentioned before, is created by the heating process. So the blank of this piece, the Amberina, was amber. So what they've done is they have reinserted it back into the furnace from here down, and it's stayed a little bit longer and it's turned red. And then they've placed it back a little bit farther down, a little bit longer, and then you get the darker color. So this is almost exclusively the heating process that gives you that different look on that. And you can see from our poster, some of it becomes very, very dark. This one, and I'm going to bring this one around and show, just so you can see. This is crackle glass, and you can see it almost looks, well, it's cracked, so that's where the crackle glass comes from. And the way this is done is the glass piece is taken out of the furnace. I'll get you. The glass piece is taken out of the furnace and it is cooled quickly, which makes the glass crack. What stops it from cracking completely and shattering, it is then placed back into the furnace to reheat again and to seal those cracks in place. So that is what achieves that. So when you look at this, and I like to tell people, because we've talked about it briefly, we had a discussion when you first came in about what can you see setting on your table that you put milk in or water in, and what is it as you see is like too heavy to pick up or too ornate to use, you would have just had as a piece of decorative. But I like to tell people in the early 1900s, this was the Rubbermaid, this was the Tupperware, this was your utilitarian ware, you know, and how much more beautiful your table would have been than it is today. Because we look at them as antiques and something precious, and for a lot of people, especially, these colors were made by the addition of some gold, and the pink on that would have had an addition of some gold. So some of these would have been very expensive in their day, but a lot of them, most people would have had on their tables.
I think, you know, it's kind of hard to imagine when you think about, you know, in disposing of so many things too, that, you know, over time, these were, like Beth was talking about, these were things that weren't thought of as much back in the day. And so, you know, she really had an insight and really could think about, well, you know, that Memphis emerald green picture might have been out of fashion, you know, in 1920, but I sure like it. And, you know, I think it's got a lot of not necessarily monetary value, but just the way it's made, its pattern, its color. So she really had an eye for picking out different things and thinking, you know, these are very worthy of being collected. And that's another thing. She was so well respected by a lot of dealers when she did do her traveling. They would write to her.
She was self-taught, but she was very well read. She read a lot on everything she could get on the things she loved, and she talked with these dealers, so she was self-educated. But we have letters in the collection where people are writing her, asking her specific questions about things they want to purchase.
Yeah, and you know, when you're thinking about this, you know, she would travel, you know, because we're a railroad town, railroad city. It was very common for her to hop on the train and go up to Pennsylvania, because she might have a dealer that has a beautiful cut glass picture that dealer, and everything was by letter that they wrote about, or they would sometimes draw an illustration. We've got letters where they would draw an illustration of, Miss Anna, I think you would really like this piece in your collection, and I put this back for you. And so sometimes she would bring it back on the train in Chattanooga, and then sometimes she would have it shipped back, depending on how much she was able to carry and that type of thing. So all of these things are very decorative, but some of them are more decorative than others and useful than others. I do want to also point out that American Brilliant cut glass is something that is very collectible. This would be an example here of a type of glass that, especially from about 1876 until 1914, were produced by so many different American glass manufacturers, all the way primarily in the Northeast, but also in the Midwest. If you were getting married or you had a special gift to give somebody, that was the thing to give a piece of American Brilliant cut glass. Or if you were throwing a special kind of party or celebration, to have that American Brilliant cut glass on your table was a really big deal. So that is an example here of something that's really been hard to reproduce and almost impossible when we look at American Brilliant cut glass. Over time, the patterns have changed as it got towards the end of the period, closer to World War I. It became more floral and less geometric, but it never, even today, it's still recognized as a very special category in glass. We have the cranberry. Of course, she loved cranberry. We actually have we have a smaller cranberry pitcher that was cut. And then we have two of these beautiful green Dorflinger pattern glass, brilliant cut glass. So once again, true to her love of pictures, we also have in clear lots and lots of different sizes of cut glass, just pictures that range. So as Beth was talking about all the different colors, the chemistry of it was important, personal interest, and then the ability to market it, and just her vision for collecting. Most of her things that she's going to have collected would be from around the 1850 until around 1915, maybe up to 1920. Things that were in the 1930s and 40s and even 20s would have been very contemporary to her. So that, Depression glass, for example, certain kinds of milk glass, because it was made for such a long period of time, would not have been something that would have been, so we would not have that in our collection. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Hi, a statement and two questions, and I'll keep it brief. She sounds like a very amazing woman, and I guess one of my first questions is, how did she attain the money to purchase all these beautiful items that she went through?
That's been a big mystery to us.
She wasn't wealthy, was
She was not wealthy. She grew up, like I said, she was born and grew up in rural Arkansas.
As she developed, she had her business on Macaulay,
Yeah.
and then Mr. Houston was a plumber,
Yeah.
and they had rental property, and they rented to a lot of UTC students.
Yeah.
And so they would buy these larger, older houses around campus back then. And then she loved it because she could get the carriage house and fill it up with her stuff. And then they could rent out the main part of the house. But, it was also a great way for her to store her things. But, they established themselves through rental property. And then, sometimes she would get loans for those properties and that type of thing.
That is interesting. We do have receipts or documents from banks who considered her a good loan risk. In a time in the country when only 4% of women worked outside of the home, she had these businesses, and the bank, she dealt with Hamilton National Bank, which I believe went through a variety. It was SunTrust for a while, it's Truist now. And we have documents that show they were willing to loan her money to make purchases. So I think I tend to believe she lived bare to the bone. She, she knew a good thing when she saw it. Some of the things she purchased in large lots. So I just think that she was a savvy businesswoman.
And she would travel the countryside back then, because there'd be a lot of these people that were, I'm cleaning out this house and, I've got this custard glass pitcher and these other things I'm trying to get rid of. And, she was there to gather it up.
Almost like the original flea market person.
Exactly.
She's an amazing woman.
Yeah.
The second question, and I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Is there a certain type of sand? I don't know, this sounds kind of silly, but there's different kinds of sand.
There is different types of sand. I am under the impression that this is the type of sand that, not necessarily beach sand, but the type of sand that's found inland from when water covered more areas than it does now. And you also added, I think it was like, kind of like bicarb, like sodium.
Yes.
So there was a little bit of an extra mixture that made the slurry, is what it was called, to make the glass. But yeah.
Are any of the colors more likely to fade than others?
Well, that's a good question.
Yes, it is.
Weirdly enough, the thing that changes the most is clear glass. Because if you have it in a window where the sunlight hits it, it becomes purple. It is often called sun purpling, or sometimes it's called sun bleaching. Some of the lighter colors like this, just because they're lighter, will fade. But it's the ones we have to be the most careful with about putting in windows is the clear glass.
Right, especially like the patterned glass next to Beth. If that were clear and it had that, what's the manganese, it had that property in it, then over time you can tell, you walk by that window and you're like, gee, that piece is a lot more purple than it used to be. Yeah.
Let me say, I've toured your museum and it's great. It's a great asset and very interesting place to go. And I've seen glass being made in Venice and other places like that. Are there places still in the United States making glass like this?
We have, of course, a gift shop. So when you come see us, Ann works really hard, and she has a beautiful gift shop. She does order things occasionally from companies that replicate things like this. One of the companies that I can think of is Mosser Glass. It's a small glass company in Ohio, and they make more like milk glass items, smaller item, cake stands, those things she got in for Easter, the rabbits on a nest, and like hens on a nest, the little things like that. They're a specialty American glass company, Blinko. We carry Blinko glass today.
They're in West Virginia.
They're in West Virginia. Those are two that I can think of right offhand. That are still made in
I think most of them, I think the big glass houses have all closed. They're all small specialty houses now.
Yeah, those are two definitely that she seems to continuously carry, and I would say that Mosser glass it's more of your pressed and patterned glass, whereas Blinko is the blown.
Did she live in the barn?
She did.
The barn that she built?
She did. And we've read so many articles about it, and then of course newspapers would come. They would come from New York and all these different newspapers, and we have wonderful black and white photos of her in that barn. And they kind of referred to it like as a series of warehouses. But she would be holding up something from her collection, and she'd be standing in front of it, and they would write articles about her, woman in Tennessee has a 1,500 pictures in her collection, and they would do articles on her hobbies, especially during the time period we're looking at hobbies. Things of collecting would be very much of interest to her, and she was featured in Hobbies magazine.
You said she didn't just collect glass, there were a wide variety of things. Any particular categories that stand out other than the glass? Or?
She collected a lot of ceramic. I mean, there's broad categories. The next largest category would be ceramics. And again, lots of pictures. For some reason, picture was her favorite shade. But what all do we have in the collection? She collected music boxes, the big, like kinds you'd find in a hotel, including one, you got to come see. It's packed away now, but we have one that you put a penny in and it will play a tune for you, and that would have been in a hotel lobby. And I like to tell people when they come in, especially like younger people, you did not carry music with you every place you went. It was not on your phone. It was not, and that's old-fashioned now, an iPod. If you wanted to hear music, you went to some churches on Sunday, not all, some churches, or you went into like hotel lobbies and you had like either a player piano or like these music boxes. But we have ceramics and glass and the music boxes. We have scrimshaw. We have things. Shaving mugs.
Occupational shaving mugs, yeah. Quilts and coverlets. We have all kinds of different textiles, dresses.
And I will add, I believe you said you did not come to Chattanooga often. If you get to Cleveland, we have an exhibit at the museum, 5 Points at Cleveland's. We have, is it 7, isn't it? We have seven woven coverlets from the 1800s. And in front of the coverlets, we have a piece of the collection that complements it. But we do have a display up there right now through the end of April.
Through the end of April,
yeah.
At the 5 Points Museum.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Was she married?
She was. Of course, Mr. Houston, she requested the name Houston to be on the museum. It's interesting that her millinery shop, though, had her maiden name.
Yeah.
So she was married, and
and she had children who died young.
That died young. 2 children at childbirth. So that, but they were quite a couple and quite successful, with him having a plumbing business, and then her having her antique shop there on Macaulay next to UTC, and. But through the divorce, she was able to obtain those 10 acres in Eastridge, and that really, helped her be able to expand and continue to collect.
So she didn't have any living children?
She did not.
No.
Did she leave records of what she paid for things and what she sold them for?
There are a few, the letters between dealers, there are a few things describing the prices on things. And it was like, this will be $5,
Okay.
So, I mean, the prices then were the going price. But there are. The thing that interests me is she had to have known before she died how incredibly valuable the collection was, but she never appears to try to sell it off or to make money off of it. She always wanted to have a museum. So.
Did she ever have it appraised? Or?
She did not personally have appraisals. There were appraisals later. And again, we had at one time, her collection in the barn at one time was counted as 15,000 pictures. There was a fire, so there was some loss in the fire, but she had a vast collection. When she died and the museum was going to be started, there was no space for that kind of thing, so a lot of it was sold. Our collection at one time was around 10 or 12,000 objects, but a small struggling museum, various times over the years things had to be sold in order to keep the doors open. So the museum sits at around 9,000 objects right now, out of what would have been a much more vast collection. But I mean, as you know, you do what you got to do to keep your doors open. And some of it was not a fit. We had at one time a gun collection of matchlock and flintlock guns. Well, that really was not, it was not a fit for what the people at the time wanted the museum to be. So things like that were sold to help support the museum.
Are there dates on the bottom?
Of each piece?
Mhm.
No, none of these objects have dates, and you know, they didn't. Most of them didn't even have paper labels back then. So all the research has to be done either at that time was through books or articles, but of course now that we have the internet and we have collectors groups that you can join. There's so much more that we know now because people have discovered old catalogs of these glass companies, and they'll publish the old catalogs, and then you can see like that's Memphis and it looks like Memphis in the catalog. So yeah.
Well, and referring back to this Burmese piece, this type of glass was created by the Mount Washington Glass Company. So we know where that would have come from because they were the ones that created it. And we know when it first appeared, which was 1865. So it can't be younger than 1865, but in their records they'll say, well, we made the Burmese glass from like 1865 to 1900. So in a lot of pieces we'll know a range of how old they are, or like it can't be younger than this. So that's how a lot of them, that's how we know.
But there's no like,
Stamp.
yeah, like
Yeah.
stamp or initial or something. You know, I know on
No.
some things there's
Well,
like
some
a key
manufacturers, like on the cut glass, will stamp their name on it.
Right. Some cut glass will have a little acid stamp that might say Libby.
Mhm.
You know, and you'll, not all, but you'll be able to see it in a certain reflection of how you hold it to the light. But most things back then were not marked, which is different from ceramics because everything in porcelains or ceramics just about had a mark on it. So glass was definitely different.
This is a loaded question, but what are you doing for fundraising? I know you've had some efforts lately, and what's working and appealing?
Well, every year we have our annual antique show, and it's always in February, and we just completed that, and you know that's a big big deal. That's our main one. We have a capital campaign that has certain things that they would host. We will host certain groups to come in. And the last one we had a guest speaker from Blackberry Farms.
Up in Knoxville.
So they came in and they did next door. They did a speaking engagement, and then of course they came in for a tour. That's just one of several.
And do you have a good relationship with the hunter?
We have a great
I
relationship.
bet. I'm glad. That's such a great piece of Chattanooga.
Beth and I are over there every second Sunday
Doing
a program with their Sunday studio. So, and then we've been invited to partner with them for summer camp.
Hi. I've always been fascinated with glass, and this is amazing for me to be able to see this. I wanted to ask, if I was a person that did stained glass work with plate type glass, where does most of that come from? It's not manufactured here in the United States anymore, apparently.
Plate, you said plate
Well,
glass?
yeah, if I was a stained glass person that made stained glass windows or such.
I'm not
sure where
Would it
that.
be all imported? I mean,
You know, it possibly could be, but I'm just not. I'm not sure about that. And yeah, that's a good question though.
There are new stained glass people doing. I know they're doing Wesley Memorial Church in Etowah, replacing some of the windows there, and there's a project in Tellico Plains a new project that they're putting in stained glass windows, so they must be getting it somewhere fairly commercially and
Well,
open.
I do think, like, what is it, Corning in New York? They switched over a lot of their, like, Corning ware. They switched over, I think, to making, like, window-type glass. So I think there are still places
Some
that
places,
make
yeah.
utilitarian glass, like the glass you would see in these doors, and like the glass that you would use for stained glass. I think that's still being made in the U.S.
Thank you.
I think so.
How do you store these?
Well, that's when we moved out of the house. So you're talking about currently, right? Or are you talking about it just in transportation?
Just keeping the thousands of pieces that you have. Do you
President.
have a container for each one of them? Are they wrapped or?
Well, a lot of them are wrapped now because they're in storage. So, we have storage units because we've moved out of our house. But what we're using now, we do either usually a special kind of bubble wrap or then that other that
The foam wrap.
the foam wrap. But and Beth, do you want to talk about how you take each piece and you photograph it, and then a lot of times you'll...
The museum practice for this is each of the pieces, and this is the way it was, and this will be when we move back into the museum. We have storage shelves on the basement, and we're getting new storage units that each piece will be stored out on the shelves. It's important when we move back to our new space that we're able to see them so we can do rotating exhibits. So the care and keeping of the piece is I look at each piece and evaluate its condition. Is it in good, fair, poor, and that will determine whether it's safe for it to be out on a shelf, if it's safe to be on storage. So each piece is evaluated, its picture is taken, and it's put in a museum database that we use called Past Perfect, so that if Tim's like, I want to do a display of all green pattern glass, I can use those search terms in the computer system and find them, and then go to the individual shelves. So they are out on shelves. Our new shelf units will have sort of a more cushioned surface so that it is safer for them if, God forbid, one of them gets bobbled. It has a safe landing space. But right now, because as I mentioned earlier, we're moving thousands of pieces are in storage in museum boxes wrapped up in bubble wrap for safety. But when they're at the museum, they are on shelves, ready to come up for people to see when we change exhibits.
And each one has either a paper
code.
Code, or the code is actually on the bottom of it. So on some of them.
Does sunlight have an effect on the glass? Maintaining its color?
Sunlight.
Yes.
Yeah, some of it we have to be very careful with, like Beth was talking about the purple glass. We don't want to put our clear pattern glass right in direct sunlight. Some of it doesn't affect, which is okay, but it's we just have to monitor that and rotate it. We've had to move very few pieces back when we were in the house, but the clear pattern glass is what seems to have affected it the most.
Well, Tim, Beth, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
And
Thanks for having us.
And let me just say, I'm sure I speak for everyone here, thank you all so much for doing what you've done to preserve this amazing woman's collection.
Yes.
Amen.
So I have not had the personal opportunity to go down and see it yet, but I will, at least on your pop-up museum that you got.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'll extend the invitation during this year and a half that you're going to be down. If y'all, we can discuss if you'd like to do a temporary exhibit here in our space.
That'd be great.
We can talk about that if that's something that to try to keep
this year.
the front and facing, keep the museum out there in the public eye as much as possible. We'd love to help.
Well, we
Yeah.
appreciate that, and we've got all kinds of ideas of different things that possibly we could curate. Yeah. And please, we've got rack cards here, information about our pop-up museum. Also, as Beth was talking about, we use these, we have an activity sheet with each program. So this one is on just glass in general and what are the components to make up different colored glass. So feel free to get some of these. And we thank you so much. We appreciate being here.